Yeah. And thank you everybody for coming tonight on this. I think it's thunderstorming out. I just got a phone call from my husband that he locked himself and my two kids out of the car at their baseball game. So if you hear dinging in the background, that's my phone. And I told them, don't bother me right now. So anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about how to find your 300-year-old grandma using 21st century technology. Um, and like Sal said, my name is Sarah Gutman. I am a professional genealogist. I'm the family tree climber, and I also work for Legacy Tree Genealogist. And I specialize in US and Italian research, specifically in assisting clients in getting dual Italian citizenship. And this is going to be recorded. I'll send out handouts, so don't go crazy writing stuff down. But again, feel free to take notes or screenshots, whatever you want that's helpful for you. And this program is for you, so feel free to also ask some questions as we go along. So one of the things that I've noticed is how far the internet has come as far as helping us as genealogists. So I started doing this back in 1994. I was about 12 years old at the time. I'm 41 now. And it was before the days of the internet when I was using I would go and I would look at the yellow pages. I would call up the operator and I'd ask her to tell me the names and addresses and the phone numbers of churches. And my parents hated that because I would then call them like collect and stuff. You know, it was the whole big to do. But I don't have to do that anymore because there's a lot of great stuff here online. And every day the computer and the internet is actually getting smarter. Right now, one of the things that I was just hearing about was using that AI, artificial intelligence that Ancestry is using, and it's really helping create records and even like the family stories behind researching our ancestors. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's right on the cusp of that. I'm not going to get too into that because I'm not quite sure what I'm talking about there, so I don't want to give anybody wrong information. But there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow coming right behind us. So let's talk about what we're going to be learning in this class today. There we go. So we'll talk about the big four. That's the big four of the genealogy world, the four big main websites, what they have to offer, some tips and some tricks, see maybe if one of them might be right for you. We'll talk about how to use Cindy's List and also Family Search Wiki to find out what's out there, what the difference between those two websites are. And we'll look a little bit too about some free websites like Find a Grave, choosing the right newspaper subscription database, why even bother looking in newspapers for things, how to look at your ancestors' house without leaving your own house and without being a stalker. We'll talk about military websites, where to get some information on people's draft records and service records in the military. And we'll talk about also too some niche American population, African American, Native American, some groups of people that have websites dedicated to learning more about a specific population. And then we'll hop over and look at some other countries and see what different websites are out there that are specific to a certain population. We'll talk about where to go from extra help. And if you have any questions, just let me know. So you can let me know. You can either come through on chat or you can just interrupt me, whatever, or just wait till the end and I'll ask for questions. So the first thing when we're starting genealogy and starting our research is we want to know, what are we looking for? And there's two reasons for this. One is we want to set ourselves a research goal because that's going to help direct us. So a research goal can be something like, I want to identify 4 generations on my paternal side, or I want to find the marriage record of my great great grandparents who I think married in New York City around 1880. I want to find out who my immigrant ancestor was. I want to trace family members back in my old country. All those things, a goal is something that is measurable and you can say, yes, I have obtained this. So for example, saying I want to trace my family tree, which is awesome, and why you're here today, that's not something that's measurable because you will be doing that for the rest of your life if you're anybody but me. But you want to be able to have something that you can check off and say, yes, this is what I'm looking for. And one of the reasons you want to do this is because genealogy, like any other thing, once you get into it, can get really expensive really fast because there are so many great websites out there that have different pieces of the puzzle that you might want. And it's expensive, it can add up. So you want to focus on one question and or one genealogy topic, and then look at what different resources are available so that you don't have all these different subscriptions out there and then you have to go cancel them later on. So that's one of the key things. And one of the best things that has happened to genealogy is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church. The Mormons have done it. I am not a member, but they have done an absolutely phenomenal job of going into repositories worldwide in these very obscure locations, getting records for people. And what they've done is they've taken all these records that are online, and they have them in the library, it's now called the Family Search Library. It was the Family History Library, but same thing, in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'm guessing everybody here has probably heard of Ancestry, right? If you've seen the commercials and everything. Ancestry is the paid version of Family Search. They're run by the same company, if you will. Ancestry has their own individual trees where you're just doing work on your tree. Nobody else can kind of play in your sandbox unless you invite them to it. Whereas in Family Search, it's the idea is to make this one world family tree. And other people can go into your tree and they can change things. And that's a little bit scary, especially if you're getting people maybe who don't really know what they're doing to go in and play with your tree. So that's why a lot of people gravitate towards Ancestry, but actually Family Search has a better collection of records available on there. And like I said, it's free. And a really, really super duper cool thing happened during the pandemic. So in the Family Search Library, there are floors of microfilm, microfiche books, and the church was trying to get all that information on microfilm online. And this was a project that was originally targeted to be completed in 2050. So maybe I'd be alive by then. I don't know. But it was something that was way too far off. But what happened during the pandemic is all those records that were in there, the Family History Library was closed. So all those people that were usually helping others really kind of buckled down, and they were able to get every single thing online and accessible at your home computer. So you no longer have to go to Salt Lake City to go look for things. Now, a lot of these records are not yet digitally indexed, which we'll talk about. So you have to go in image by image, but they are available online for you to find. So that is like super duper exciting in the genealogy world. So again, talking about the big four, I just mentioned two of them. We have Ancestry, which everybody knows, Family Search, which is that free version, it's familysearch.org. They have Find My Past, which is a UK-based company. And it has fantastic records of the UK and Ireland, lots of great stuff, Northern Ireland as well. And then looking at mainland Europe, MyHeritage is where they kind of go and put a lot of their records on it. Really great for German, Scandinavia, French collections, and other parts for there. Also, Find My Past, in addition to having being a UK-based company, a lot of the Catholic dioceses have partnered with them, and you can find their old sacramental records on there. So that's really helpful if you're looking for some church records, because church records are one of the earliest records that we have in this country, that you can go on Find My Past and you can search for those records. So even if you're not, maybe you don't have family from the UK, this is still something that is helpful for you. Now, another cool thing about these websites, if you've taken a DNA test from Ancestry, you can go onto Ancestry and you can upload your DNA, and don't bother opening it because it's just going to be a whole bunch of letters. You're not going to be able to understand it unless you're a super duper scientist. Um, and then you can upload that into Find My Past or My Heritage for free. And it's either you can see your matches for free or you can see the area that your family's from for free. I don't remember. But either way, it's really cool. So, say, for example, your Ancestry DNA tells you um, you are from Ireland, right? Your family's from Ireland. You upload that into Find My Past. And now, because it's this particularly based company, you're going to be able to see more likely the particular area or even sometimes an actual village where your family is from using those DNA results. So you're going to get more targeted matches by using those companies in that area. And you're also more likely, especially with My Heritage, to find matches um, from Europe over there. So that's kind of some cool stuff. So when we, again, going back to setting a goal for ourselves, we want to create a plan. How are we going to find this goal? How are we going to find out who our immigrant ancestor is? How to do research over in Italy? We want to know what's available and we want to know where to look. So what's available, where to look. Now, this is a chart of when each state started mandating state vital records. So if you take a peek here, see somebody's in the waiting room. If you take a peek here, you can see for New York, the magic number is we start getting these vital records in 1880. So sometimes I'll get a client that'll say, I'm looking for my ancestor who was married in New York in 1790. Well, I know right off the bat, don't bother trying to find them in civil vital records because it's very likely not going to exist. Though some counties did start doing records beforehand. But I want to figure out what alternative records might be available. So in this case, it might be church records. It might be even just baptismal records alluding to the fact that maybe a couple had a child there, obituary, something like that, that might have mentioned the union of a person. So knowing what's available is really important because you don't want to spend time looking for something that's not going to be there. Did somebody, I think somebody sent a chat. I was just trying to see. No, okay. I heard a little ding. And if you look here, it's really interesting, I think, to see some of these states and about how late some of them started mandating these vital records. So in Montana, for example, marriages in 1943, we have Minnesota, 1958. Again, in Kentucky, Texas, a lot of these are really, you have to find alternative routes to getting some of these records. So just knowing what's out there is really helpful. Now there's two websites that you might want to take a peek at of looking. I'm just going to close this door here for a second so it's not loud. Hold on a minute. Okay. So there's two places to go and look for what's available online. Now, I don't know if anybody is like me and they like to go shopping. Particularly, I like TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Now, if you've gone to a TJ Maxx and Marshalls, you know that they have a lot of really good stuff available, but you have to go and you have to search through the racks, right? So there's this website and it's called Cindy's List, and it's created by this woman. Her name is Cindy. And what she did was, I think she said she's been doing this for 30 years, basically since the dawn of the internet. And she went and she found helpful websites that pertain to certain topics and she bookmarked them. So you can go onto Cindy's List and you can search by genealogy categories, countries, topics, whatever, military, whatever, and see what websites that have been bookmarked that might be helpful. And again, this is a free website. Some of these links are dead links, so they're not going to take you anywhere. They're websites that might have shut down. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're just not good. They don't pertain to you. It's really like going shopping and having to pull out every item of clothing to see if it's good or not. And sometimes you might want to bring it to the dressing room or try it back on. Other times you might want to put it back on the rack because it's not for you. That's Cindy's list. Um, Again, these are just some of the things that you might find on there. Um, Now, the other one that I personally like better is Family Search Wiki. Family Search Wiki is free. It's run by the Mormons. It's run by Family Search. And Family Search Wiki is really in tune with what is available on Family Search. They run sympathetically together. I think I either made up that word or I'm using it correctly. I'm not sure. But anyway, they run very nicely together. So if you go onto Google and go to Family Search Wiki, and you could type in right here the area that you're looking for. So in this case, I want to find out how to do some research with New York genealogy. And if you look over here, there's some really cool stuff. They have the different types of records that are available, and not just available, but if you click on any of these, it'll give further descriptions. It'll give further collections that you might want to check out. And those collections might be in different websites. They'll mention things like Find My Past, maybe even a website particular to a specific country, an archive. They have sometimes little videos about how to do research in a particular area, and that's usually super helpful if you're doing something in another country. And then if you scroll down, they have, and again, you can find this with all the areas, they have a map. So in this case, if I clicked on Suffolk County, it would bring me to, I have it here. Suffolk County, New York. It's going to give me a little bit about the county. And it's also going to tell me when the particular vital records were that the county started. So as you remember before, I said New York started keeping vital records in 1880. Suffolk County did a little bit before that in 1847. And we can also find some land records, court records. So I know what's available for that area. It tells me what areas are around that town. If there's any record loss known of, that's especially important for if you're working down south. A lot of times there were record losses. And then over to, it gives us information about the courthouse, where to go find those records, and additional, you could, click on topics here. Really, really cool stuff. Say I wanted to know about New York church records. They give me different religions that are available and where I can go to click on to find more about those particular faiths where their church records are. Any questions, any comments so far? Okay, everybody's holding on good, so nice job. Don't be shy if you have a question or if I'm talking too fast, please. Okay, let me get back to order. So this has changed a little. That's kind of in the middle of being changed. That family history. Actually, I'm going to come back to this because it's a little bit different right now. Let's pop over to findagrave.com. We'll go back to Family Search because their website's a little bit, like I said, they've been changing it in the last few weeks. So Find a Grave is a free website that's available online, and it's held and managed by regular people like me and you, people that maybe like myself enjoy going to a cemetery and walking around and getting information off tombstones, because you can find a wealth of information there. So for example, what you would do is you go on to Find a Grave and you put in one of your family members' names, and something like this might pop up. This is my great grandmother, Monica Warner. It shows a picture of her tombstone. Not all of them have pictures of tombstones, but a lot of them do. I'll say about 80%. It tells us when she died, where she was buried, and sometimes they also tell you information on other family members who were either buried in the area or maybe not, maybe just other family members that they know of. Sometimes there's links to obituaries there. I've seen links to death records as well. And what Find a Grave is really good for is it's a really good jumping off website. So while it's awesome that you can see this information here, I invite you to take the next step and reach out to the cemetery and give them a call. Call up a cemetery and say, hey, I was on Find a Grave and I saw that you had the burial record for my ancestor, and the name of the ancestor, and ask them, especially if you're only seeing something like here where you're not seeing the specific dates, say, can you please tell me when that person died? And usually they'll say, well, we can only tell you when they're buried. Fine, you can figure it out. Something usually like 3 days in there. How old is the person? Do you have a birth date for that person? Ask, this has been very helpful for me, is ask who else is buried with that individual. Sometimes, a lot of times, there's other family members in that plot. Sometimes you'll get other members and you're like, who the heck are these people? And a common practice, especially amongst our immigrant ancestors, was just people in the neighborhood would get a plot, somebody would pass away, they'd go in there, and it was just cheaper. So there could be just absolutely no relationship to an individual. Ask the burial place if they know where the individual, where the funeral was held, the funeral mass, because you can call up and you can say, hey, I wanted to know if you have some church records on this individual. Maybe their kids are baptized there, maybe they were married there. If there was a funeral parlor that was in charge of this, usually their names are going to also be on the burial records. And funeral parlors often are not held to the same obligation that civil records are. So you can call up some of these funeral parlors, and many of them have been in business for generations, and say, hey, do you have the death record, the copy of the death record of Monica Warner? She died in 1960. And a lot of times these people will go to their back rooms, whatever, they'll call you back in a few hours, they'll send you an email of the death record. And it's the same thing that you would have been waiting a whole long time, at least in New York, to get. So it's a cool way of kind of going a roundabout circle of getting information. And again, that's on findagrave.com, free website. So you might as well just check it out. Now, caveat to this is anybody can edit this. And that can be really great. And it can also be really not great at the same time, because people might think that a person's associated with certain particular members. They might associate documents that is not with that person. So just be aware of that. Just always take it with a grain of salt and do additional researches as well to make sure you're not climbing somebody else's family tree. Google Books is a pretty cool website. If you've checked this out, it's different than regular Google. Go into Google Books, and anything published 100 years before copyright is free. And what's important about that is a lot of, especially towns, farming towns, and we move out west, a lot of places they create these yearbooks for the people in their town, the people in their churches. Sometimes they're called brag books. And it's basically they interview members of the community. They can put little bios in this. And it's a lot of really cool stuff. I've since purchased things on eBay that I found on Google Books. Sometimes, for example, they have record collections. Churches will put up their record collections on there and you can just view them. And the way that you would search for this is you put in, if you have a particular town, just put in the town's name, see if anything comes up. Sometimes you might get histories, you might get church records. You could try last names. Maybe somebody might have done a genealogy for your family already and they have it on Google Books. And when you do something like that, you hope that you don't have a very common last name. My maiden name's Gadati, and that's a lot easier to find, or I guess better to search for than my mom's maiden name, which is Baker, because there's a lot more Bakers out there. Gadati's a lot easier to kind of go, okay, this is worth looking at. The Google Books is really cool. And even in the Google Books, if you find something on a particular town, say you're looking in Port Jeff, you can go into the book and it'll usually have a magnifying glass, and then you can put in a keyword. So if you're looking for your last name or something, pop it in there, see if that individual might come up in there. I've, like I said, I found some really fantastic finds on this, especially with my ancestors from a very small farming town in Pennsylvania. The churches would put out these books where they would interview the old members. I have one from 1899, and it's of my great 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 grandfather. And it talks about how his family fought in the American Revolution. It gave a little bio of him, and also just talked about his ancestors. So it's really cool stuff. So you might as well, again, just give it a try. Another great resource is newspapers. And before we had social media, this is where people would go to find out just common events that happened in their town. Now, I'm not talking about big news stories, but I'm talking about Roberta Baker had a party when she was 12 years old, and this is the gifts that her friends bought, and they wore these cotillion outfits, whatever. And her mom served chocolate cake with white frosting. That was a story that was on my grandmother, this little town in Massachusetts. And it's like, it's really cute things like that. You also get to see maybe your family members wrote editorials to the newspaper, ads, businesses, if you have businesses. Oh, if I had it downstairs, I'd show it to you. But I found my great grandma, um, she was in the original advertisements for dishwashers that were run by General Electric, and she was in all these dishwasher ads. I had no idea, nobody talked about it, that ran throughout New York. So you get some really cool stuff in there. Sports, if your family did anything with that, that was usually in there. People got on honor roll, marriage announcements, anything. So and so went to go visit this person this weekend, and they had a cherry pie. Boom, in the newspaper. Learn about it. So really great websites to find out with newspapers is, if you have, I'm going to say the first place to look, and this is if you live in New York, which I'm guessing many of us do, you can go to the New York Public Library and you can get a free library card. And that will give you access to a ton of newspapers throughout America. So that's a great way of getting some free stuff right there. That's, the one in New York City, that big one, which also has a great genealogy section. And by section, I'm really underselling that. It's really just almost like its own building. But the New York Public Library, get a card. You can go on their website, get access to all these great newspapers, really cool stuff. If you have family who lived in New York, I would definitely recommend checking out this website, fultonhistory.com. And it's this guy, he lives in Fulton, New York, and he's put together this website. And you're going to go on this website, fultonhistory.com, and you're going to think, I think this is broken because it just looks very, it reminds me of when you go to like an amusement park and they have that really old wooden roller coaster there. You're thinking like, this can't be safe. Like, this isn't right. But actually, it's really fun. It's great. I have found so many wonderful things on this database that you can't find anywhere else. So anywhere, New York, check it out. The big name sellers are newspapers.com, run by Ancestry. By the way, if you have been a member of Ancestry for at least the last 10 years, you probably are thinking to yourself, hey, I had a subscription to newspapers.com and Fold 3, which is the military site. Where did it go? Well, they got really smart and they realized that they can charge you extra to get these other subscriptions in there. So they made them separate things. So newspapers.com, that's run by Ancestry. Genealogybank.com, that is owned by Family Search. And if this is the stupidest thing, if you go on genealogybank.com, they will charge you for a membership. But you can also go on Family Search and you can get about 90% of that stuff for free on there. So I don't know who's running their business deals there, but I personally don't think that's a great idea. But whatever, it's free. Who cares? There's also Newspaper Archives. That's another big newspaper site. Now, before you go and sign up for a paid subscription, I want you to go into the newspaper part and say, check out newspapers available for a location. Type in the location that your ancestors are from, And also type in the date, because you want to see before you spend all this money on something to make sure that this newspaper site carries the newspaper articles that you're looking at. So check it out. You can do that before you purchase it. It's kind of like a little test drive. Um, and again, make sure the dates line up, because yes, they have this newspaper, but oh wait, they only have it from the 1990s to present. I want to go to the older stuff. And by the way, if you're looking for um, a family from some other place, whatever, a really good suggestion is go and contact that location's local library and say, hey, do you have access to these newspapers, from this time period? And a lot of times they'll give you like a little guest membership, and you could just go log on to that little library's website and you can look at their newspaper stuff for free. So that's always cool. Again, things to look for in the newspapers. We have obituaries, marriage announcements, birth announcements, daily happenings, graduations, selling of property, business advertisements, police blotters, and also people change their name. Later on, they used to be able to just do that. They didn't have to tell anybody. All of a sudden, they are called something. But later on, when somebody changed their name, they had to run some advertisements not advertisements. They had to take out an ad in the newspaper to say, hey, my name is Sarah Gutman. I'm going to go by this name now. Just they had to alert people. So that's a good way too of finding if your ancestors had changed their name. Another interesting thing that you could find in the newspapers are when people would make divorce announcements. If you wanted to get divorced, you had to put, at least in New York, you had to run an ad about that, and you had to tell why you were getting divorced. And I have a really interesting article of it was my mom's Aunt Honey, great Aunt Honey. My great Aunt Honey had an affair with the guy who created Lowe's movie theaters. And there's an article that I have, and it's Aunt Honey looking very prim and proper, and her husband just slamming her about how she left his bed and went to this man's bed and yada yada yada. And she's a trollop, like just really, I can't imagine being this poor, like not poor woman, but like, how do you show your face around town after that? But they did it, like, phew, rough time. So you can find things like that on there. Also, again, with the obituaries, they're great clues for jumping off. This is my great grandfather's here, and it tells us just a little bit about him. Johnny Vanko, where he lived. It gives his profession, that he was born in Czechoslovakia, which is wrong. That he came over in his teens, his wife's name, where his wife died, different membership societies that he was in, the church he attended, which again, you can look at the church records, contact them, say, hey, do you have information on these people? His next of kin, and where those people lived as well. So lots of really cool stuff. I could talk about newspapers all day, but I won't. So Google Earth is another thing. I'm sure a lot of people have probably done Google Earth, but this is a really cool way of checking out your ancestors' homeland without leaving your couch. And if you have younger people, I find this to be a really fun way to kind of get them involved. And my kids are 7 and 8, and they like to look at, people's houses and our ancestral villages. And I will say I had planned, and by planned, I mean, this is all in my head. I can't even get the calls these days. So I'm not getting to Italy anytime soon, but you want to go to these ancestral villages, and I'm going down these Google maps of the town. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to get out of here with, my pocketbook. Like, this does not look safe. So sometimes I can cross off a place on your map. And just looking at it from home is good enough sometimes. But anyway, if you go and you find people's addresses, census records, vital records, I know with Italian records, they would often tell you where a person was born, the actual street address. And this is in the 1860s. So you can go and you can type into Google Earth, take that little man character, and this is where the wheels are going to fall off on my technology knowledge. You take that little man character and you plop them down, and then you can kind of go through the streets and move your mouse around and see what it looks like. And you could see what your family's house looks like. And my father does this all the time. He does this like with his aunts who have since passed away. And I hear him commenting about how he hates the way that somebody took out these shrubs and changed the color of the shutters and whatever. So anyway, you could do it for that too. So it's a fun thing. Now, if there is someone in your family who served in, and I'm not going to say served, was involved in the American Revolution for the good guys, you can find information on them for free on the Daughters of the American Revolution website. The DAR has done a fantastic job, and I am a member of them, of taking members applications, approved members applications, and their family trees and their sources of their sites and posting them online. So you can search by the surname of your family. You go on here, you go to this website, go to research, you could put in the surname of your family who may have lived during the time of the Revolutionary War, and it'll show you patriot services, when they were born, the birth, death, places of their children. And again, they're creating these family trees. So if you see somebody from your family, you know it's you, click on the button and boom, automatic family tree. So that's pretty cool. And I found that if you have one patriot ancestor, you probably have a lot. You have a lot because they're just there at the time. I don't know the right words to say, but they're just there. I have 5 patriot ancestors. And by patriot, they didn't necessarily fight in the American Revolution. They could have been people who paid their taxes for it. They donated money. They donated furniture, clothes. They signed oath of allegiances. They might have housed soldiers. So anybody who was involved in the cause, you can find information on them on the Daughters of the American Revolution website. If you're looking for military records, and by the way, military records, specifically World War I, World War II draft cards, are one of the best and most overlooked ways of finding the actual name of your immigrant ancestors' birthplace, because they would have written these cards themselves and they provide the names. Now, I have found that a lot of times with these, if you're getting the ancestral names, it's good to note, especially on census records, to compare it if that person is able to read and write. If they are able, or rather, if they are not able to read and write, or if they don't speak English, and you see an actual birthplace, try to picture yourself at that time period and how you would phonetically spell something. So picture it that way, because it'll make your life a lot easier. So anyway, phonetically spelling things, take with a grain of salt. And by the way, so if you've ever seen these draft cards, they look like they're like a piece of paper big, right? I recently just inherited my great grandfather's draft card, and it's about the size of a driver's license. And I was shocked by that find. I just thought that was so cool. So they're pretty tiny. And another thing that you can find on fold3.com, and sometimes they have like free weekends. I think they just had one with Memorial Day. Search these records for free. 4th of July, they usually have like 3 free days. You can take a peek at some stuff. But they also have burial records for people who fought in the service and died in battle, or maybe who have been buried in national cemeteries. And this here is a really, for me, a special burial record, which sounds so weird saying that I have a special burial record. But my grandma, she had her uncle Albert, who lived with the family. He went over to fight in World War II, and he was in the Battle of Cassino in Italy. And while he was there, he was in a Jeep, and the Jeep blew up. And my grandma remembers them coming to the house, telling him that he passed away. And for everybody's knowledge, according to grandma and some of her cousins who I spoke with, they said that Albert's remains remained in Italy. Well, a couple of years ago, I found this record on Fold3, and it turns out, now this guy lived in Yonkers in Westchester. That's where he was from. He was buried in the Long Island National Cemetery, pretty close to where we live. And so somebody had brought over his body, and I went with my son, who was then in a little stroller, and we went to the cemetery site. And I just like, it was a very moving experience. And my grandma was, hysterical crying or whatever. But I think I was the only person to ever physically go and visit the grave, knowing that he was there. So that was just like a really cool find for me. But you can find a lot of interesting things on there. And if you have somebody in your family who may have fought in the Civil War, one of the best record collections for them is the Civil War's widow pension. And that would be if, say, if my husband had died in the Civil War, I would get a pension, and that pension record would be with my name on there as well. And it would tell me his, who he fought under. Sometimes it tells you the battles that he fought under, any other information on it. And this is true with any of these military records. If you're looking at something like this and they name an individual who they fought under, like a general, whatever, go into Google Books, type that person's name in there, and you can find out what battles that person was involved with. So you kind of do like a little roundabout way of finding information on your ancestors by looking at those higher up peoples. If you have family from New England, that used to be called the New England Historical Genealogical Center, it's now the American Ancestors. Especially if you have any family from Massachusetts, this is a really great website, and a lot of these collections are specific to this website. And it's definitely a must for people who have who are Mayflower descendants. There's a lot of information on there. And they have different types of subscriptions. So they have a free subscription, they have a paid subscription. So you might just want to play with that, see if you can find, what kind of fits for you. I have found this very beneficial for me from my mother's side. They had people came over from Massachusetts, so there's a lot of cool records on there. For people who have African American ancestry, there's some specific websites dedicated to that. We have enslavedpeople.org. And I'm not going to try to pronounce this other website because I'm going to mess it up, but it focuses on the African side of helping people trace their roots over in Africa and helping them find specific geographical locations that their family may be from. And I believe there's a DNA component to that, but I might be wrong. I'm not sure. And then we have the Africa map that was put together by Harvard. And again, it kind of pairs people with specific DNA components with there. For people who of Jewish ancestry, there's Jewish Gen, and that is really your go-to place for doing Jewish research. They have Jewish burial records, which I'm friends with one of the girls on my European team, and she specializes in Jewish records. And she said that's really what you want to capture when you're doing Jewish research, is really looking at these Jewish burial records. They'll provide you with people's Hebrew name, the name of their parents, their place where they lived in a foreign country, some really great stuff there. So that's jewishgen.org, and I believe it's free and paid for. I could be lying about this. I get everything free from work, which is a really cool perk, so I don't really remember. They also have JRI Poland, and that takes a lot of information from Poland, parts of Russia's in there. They have their own special indexing Soundex system. So they take names and they're able to figure out the Yiddish, the Hebrew versions of that to kind of help you with your search. They also have Holocaust records and people who have done family trees with Jewish descendancy. Native American records. Interesting thing about Native Americans and African Americans with the census records, they were not included in the general population until 1870. So they have their own central database, a lot of these with census records. The Native American research, we have a vital directory of things that are available here. And a website, or rather it's not so much a website, but it's more of something to check out, was if you have been told or believe whatever that your family hails from like the Cherokee tribe, the way that we figure that out is we check out the Dawes rolls, DAWES, Dawes rolls, and you go online, and I believe they're held in like Ohio Library. It's free to look, and you type in the name of your ancestor that was alive during the time of the Trail of Tears. If they were alive during the time of the Trails of Tears, their name would have been entered into the Dawes roll, and that's what a lot of people use to trace their or trace or say that they have Native American heritage. That's kind of a cool thing. Hopping over to some other countries, some of the big things. Let me just check the time here because I will just sit here and ramble on. The British Isles. We talked about Find My Past. That's a great website. We have Gazetteer of British Place and Names. A gazetteer is basically a website where you can put in a place, put in the name of a place or even the Soundex of a place, and it'll tell you what that place is currently or what that place is 100 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever it was. So that's super helpful. So you might have a name of a place and you might want to look under some different names as well and pop it into that gazetteer. If you have Scottish heritage, check out Scotland's Peoples. I do not have Scottish heritage, but P.S. If you have done an ancestry test recently, you might have noticed on your DNA that suddenly you have, and I would love to see people put this in the chat if they have this, a ton of Scottish or even any Scottish DNA. That is going to change. They change your DNA about every 5 months, but they recently just tested a whole bunch of people from Scotland. So now people from Ancestry all have a bunch of Scottish DNA on them. So don't get too excited that, oh, I have Scottish DNA. Let me go run scotlandpeople.com. Wait a few months. It's probably going to change again. Don't get a tattoo of it saying it on there because you'll be very disappointed. We also have the National Archives of Ireland. And there's a lot of other ones. I have a whole website on Irish, different websites available for people with that. But those are just some like wet your whistle a little bit, get started on there. Canada. I always use this. I should move these slides because I always say we're hopping over the pond and I drag us back over with Canada. Canada, we have the Library and Archives of Canada available, and the Archives Canada. Canada's not very good at, I guess, creating original names for things because they just kind of full of it. So Archives of Canada, Canada Archives, pick your poison here. But those are the websites and they're free. This is where I spend my day. This in the laundry room. These Italian websites. So the Italian Archives is available online for free, which is really cool. It's at Antonati, this website right here. The downfall of this is if you look over here, they're in Italian. So that's kind of put offish, if you will. You can, and this is true for any region that has a foreign language, you can train yourself to pick out certain things in documents so that you at some point think, oh my gosh, I'm bilingual, and you're not. It's just totally confined to the document. Don't try to order anything at a restaurant, whatever, because I can do that. I can look at a document, I'm fine. If I put me in the streets of Italy, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can read a death record. But anyway, you can go, you can look at these records online. This is the website for it. It is not digitally indexed. So with Italy, as with a lot of European places, you have to know the actual town that your family's from. And then you have to go into that town, into the year that you're looking for, and you're going to get a couple, maybe 100 pages of things written in another language. And that's really super overwhelming. Unless, I don't know, that's your thing, whatever, good for you. But I find that very overwhelming. In the back of these records, there's usually an index. So I always go to the back of the index. I look to see a family's name. If it's not there, I pass on by. If I do see the family's name, I just go to the page that they're on and look for the record there. Again, not every collection has an index, but I always hope and pray that it does because it makes my life so much easier. With Italy, we also have a gazetteer where I can pop in here, and this tells me the names of towns. It also provides me with the address and the email of the actual, I guess, town clerk's office, church records. They give me the churches that are in the area. It also gives me the address of the bank and the pharmacy. I don't know, but like if I want to know where CVS is, boom, I got it. Germany. Germany has some pretty cool records. Um, they you want to hope that your family is Protestant because Protestants kept better records than Catholics. And the Protestant records are available for a price on Archean. And they do, I believe, have a database on there. So you can type in their name, boom, pops up. Matricula is the Catholic Church records. Also okay, but not as good, not anywhere near as good. So you hope that they're Protestant. And I always just hear my mom. I went to 18 years of Catholic school, and I could just hear her saying, like, why are you saying that? But anyway, it's just helpful. We also have a gazetteer, the Myers Gazetteer, because Germany, of course, with all the wars that were happening there, the Empire of Russia, whatever, the names get changed a lot. So you can pop in there. Also does a sound X to try to find things. It'll give you what it is now, what it was then, and to help you out that way. We also have church records from the area of the German Empire that is now Poland in here on this website. And again, not going to try to pronounce it, but it's right here. Send you this website. You can write it for yourself because I doubt anyone's going to remember that. Greece, it's the word. We have the General State Archives of Greece. It's free, just like Italy. There's no searchable index. So you do need to know the exact town. And their voting records are one of their best collections that they have there. And it tells, it's patriarchal, so it's going to tell the information on the father. MyHeritage, as of 2022, they have keywords with Greek, so that does have a digital index, so you can pop names in there, see if it comes up. And they also have a free how-to place, kind of like that Cindy's List or Family Search Wiki. They have it for Greek, and it's called GreekAncestry.net. And you can do things, you can look for records, and it's a pay per record order. So imagine going onto Ancestry and you find your search. If you want to look at that record, you're paying per record. It's not a particular subscription. So yeah, we're almost done, promise. We're trying to get you right at that 8 o'clock mark. Scandinavia. So we're talking about Norway here, Danish records, Swedish. They're kind of like the dark horse of genealogy records. They just kind of came out of nowhere and they just won. Like they just slammed the market with a bunch of records, and everybody of Scandinavian heritage just rejoiced because all this stuff became available. So Swedish archives, we have this one right here. I know this is a big one that people seem to love. The Norway archives, lots of really cool stuff on here that if you have Scandinavian ancestry, you're in luck. And then some extra help places to go. We have, if you find a document that's in another language and you need it translated, something more than like just a Google Translate, or you're seeing some really hard church records, some of that old script that they have there. A lot of Facebook communities are really helpful for that. So I'm a member of a lot of ethnic Facebook communities. I post documents on there, and now I do it at work, and just say, hey, can somebody tell me what this says? And people are so nice. They just like translate things for free. If you need something professionally translated, you can go to this website, Fiverr.com. It's Fiverr with 2 R's. And the idea is that people do things starting at $5. And I've gotten some really great translations there, legal translations for people becoming dual citizens. You can also run it for yourself at Google Translate, which is always for free. Family Tree Magazine has a lot of very user-friendly articles Now, off the record, I think a lot of these like scholarly genealogy magazine articles are kind of really good when you're trying to fall asleep at night. I'll put it that way. But Family Tree magazine, I find very palatable, very enjoyable. And I always learn something from there. So they have some good articles. They have access to websites. They have little um, videos you can watch, tutorials. There's me. I'm the Family Tree Climber. I work for the Legacy Tree. I do also one-on-one sessions. I do it sometimes with this library. People can sign up, and we just talk about their genealogy mysteries or celebrations or whatever. And I do it also monthly through the Comswog Library. So you can sign up there as well. And they're free. You don't need to be a member. You can always email me for more information. And if you like podcast your things, they have Genealogy Gems, the Genealogy Guys on there, it's a Family Tree podcast, and also Extreme Genes. And I've been a guest on 3 of the 4 of them. So you can find me there too. Yeah, so that is just about perfect. We're ready at 8 o'clock. I love it. I would love for some questions, comments, anything.
I am going to stop the recording, so no one feel pressured.